Howdy, folks. Here today with a explanation of what our task is when I talk about ACT argumentative writing. And so there's a lot of great things and a lot of bad things when we take a look at standardized tests, and especially writing on standardized tests. So what I really like about the ACT is that all the prompts that they give you are really asking you to look and analyze the world around you. This is something that we can and should be able to do as citizens of the United States and just as educated human beings, to continually look and see what connects in our world. The bad things about the ACT are kind of that time frame that it gives you. I don't like the idea of writing a whole essay in 40 minutes. That's stressful. And let's just acknowledge that this is a tough task. But do keep in mind that as ACT readers, as teachers, and even as a student approaching this, is that we are not looking for a perfect essay. We are just looking at sort of, can you get an idea out in a formalized, organized structure in 40 minutes, knowing that you're probably going to make mistakes, and it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. So don't fret about like, oh my God, I can't write a full essay in 40 minutes. I think you can, with a little bit of practice, as long as we know kind of what we're being asked to do, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So let's take a look at what the prompt actually looks like. So on the ACT, you're going to find a page that looks almost exactly like this, where you have a topic, you've got a prompt, you've got some perspectives, and you've got your task. And I'm going to highly recommend that you read thoroughly and annotate, like grab your pencil and underline and make notes, the prompt as well as the perspectives. And in this prompt, you're always going to see a question embedded in it. So here we can see the question: automation is generally seen as a sign of progress, but what is lost when we replace humans with machines? That is the question we are answering and developing. The rest of the prompt here is just to give us some background information, kind of getting our brain thinking about this idea. And then we're going to get the perspectives. And again, this is all just kind of like priming the pump of our thought process, where these are going to be different opinions that are given to respond to this question that we've gotten, which is nice. This cuts our thinking time, in half or more, because we can already say like, oh, I'm in answering this question, I'm kind of agreeing with perspective 1, or I'm kind of agreeing with perspective 3. So that way we don't have to come up with an entire idea in a vacuum. We can use the ideas presented to us to start creating our own essay, which is really, really helpful, right? So I will say about the perspectives, don't just copy and paste them. Take them as a starting point for your ideas. And if you do end up using language from any of these in your own essay, put it in quotes to show that the reader, the scorer of your essay, that like, hey, I'm using this, but I'm putting in quotations so you know that I know that I took it directly. I'm not passing it off as my own ideas. It's the prompts language that I'm using to enhance my own. Okay. And truly what this essay is asking you to do is to state what's your perspective, how is your perspective different, and what you can use to back up these ideas. It's very personal essay, right? That's what I want to see as a teacher is, what are your thoughts? Can you get your thoughts out in writing in a cohesive, coherent manner? So don't be afraid to use that word I. You can do that on this essay, totally fine. Don't overuse it, right? Don't start every sentence with I, but when you're stating your perspective, let me know. Let me know that this is what you think, clearly. Academically, here's what the task looks like, where we're stating our own perspective, right? We covered that. And then we also have to develop it. And by develop it means kind of to explain, here's why I think my idea, my response to this question is right or defended. And then secondly, I do have to analyze the relationship between your idea and at least one of the other perspectives. So say I agree with, perspective 1. I'm going to spend most of my essay kind of defending, like, okay, here's what I think, here's why I think it. And I'm going to spend a portion of my essay saying, when I think about this other perspective, here's how it connects or disconnects with mine, right? And I'll explain what I mean by a counter argument a little bit later. So in approaching this, how do I get this task done in 40 minutes? I'm going to have us take a look at our normal formal essay steps, right? if I were to give you this prompt and give you a week to do it, these are the steps that I would expect you to go through. Brainstorm your ideas, plan it out, maybe make a short little outline, write it, come up with a draft, revise that draft, move things around and edit it, and then kind of touch things up, get your grammar and your punctuation, your spelling all together. The only part of that process that you can't really do in 40 minutes is that revision process. Because if you have pencil and paper, it's really hard to write an essay and realize, oh man, I put this paragraph in the wrong place, or this paragraph doesn't even fit. It needs to be, X'd out, and I need to come up with something else. We don't have time to do that, and even the ability to do that with pencil and paper. So our brainstorming and our planning before we even get to writing becomes that much more essential. So to have a clear idea of where we're going is really going to help us get this done in 40 minutes. So the first step is going to be to brainstorm for 5 minutes. You got 40 minutes to write. Spend the first 5 minutes really understanding the prompt and then brainstorming these 3 things. Why is this prompt important, according to you? What's your thesis? What's your stance, your idea? And it can be related to one of those perspectives. That's okay. And then really start to think through, maybe just brainstorm, what are some positives of this stance? And what are some limitations of maybe my stance or limitations of the other stances and perspectives that I'm seeing? What that might look like is a brief outline like this. So these 9 things. And basically I'm planning out my first 3 or 4 paragraphs where I want to give a clear introductory paragraph where I address, here's why this topic is important, here's what the question is, and here's what I'm saying about it. Here's my arguable statement, my arguable opinion. And then I'm going to figure out how am I going to defend that arguable opinion with these 2 kind of main supporting ideas. Why is my thesis, my idea, valid? And brainstorm some brief examples of what I could use to back those ideas up, connecting everything back to my thesis. So I'm going to try to come up with at least 2 of those, 2 ideas to defend my thesis, and then I'm going to spend a little bit of time also thinking about what I'm going to call a counterclaim, which is how am I going to address the other side of my perspective? What are the differences between my ideas and the other ideas? What are some of those limitations of the other side? Because that can really help you. If I agree with perspective 1, part of strengthening my argument might be explaining, okay, I understand perspective 2, but here's what perspective 2 is missing, or here's what they're not thinking about. Here's kind of why they're wrong in some sense. You don't have to use those exact terms. And here's why that makes my idea even better, even stronger. All right. So after we have this brief brainstorm done, now I'm going to have you write and spend the entire time writing, right? If you spend 5-minute brainstorming, you better spend 35 minutes writing. Because unless you've written every essay for every English or social studies or science class, and you finished it in 40 minutes, you've gotten a perfect score on it, you're going to need to use all of the time you have available to yourself. So looking at this, looking at the paragraphs that you're going to want to create a little bit more in depth, I say write this down, so put this in your notes. These are the things that you're going to want to include. So in your introductory paragraph, you're going to want to create a hook. So something to just get your reader thinking about this topic. And I'd really argue that you should explain kind of here's what the question is, and here's why this question is important for the world to think about today. I'd also encourage you to include what I'm going to call a roadmap to your essay, which will basically explain, okay, here are the main ideas I'm going to use to defend my thought about why this is important. And I'm going to wrap up, I'm going to put my thesis at the end of my introductory paper that's just clearly stating, here's what I believe. So this doesn't have to be that long of an introduction, 3 sentences. That's all we need. We're just kind of ticking the boxes to say, I can think thoroughly through this entire introduction process. Then for the rest of my body paragraphs, it's just a standard body paragraph. Okay, what's my topic sentence? What's my claim? What's my evidence? And what's my reasoning? Topic sentence, supporting ideas, and reasoning, or I'm going to call it analysis here as well. So a clear idea, a clear example of that idea, and then I'm really going to spend most of my paragraph explaining how does my idea and how does my example connect and defend my thesis. Got to tie it all the way back in to that main claim that I came up with. Even when I get to that third counterclaim paragraph, my topic sentence might not be defending my claim. My topic sentence might be sort of criticizing other perspectives and explaining here's why those other perspectives don't quite fit in my view of the world. And then lastly, for some examples that you could use in defending your own ideas. Obviously, you don't have your cell phone. Obviously, you don't have Google to help you out and come up with other ideas and look up sources and things. You got to pull these things from yourself, which is great. You get to connect your thoughts to other things that you've learned and seen in the world. So the 4 different types of examples that I might recommend, kind of in order of strength, would be historical or literary examples, right? Think about your history classes, think about your science classes, think about the books you've read, and reference those as examples for things you could use in defending your essay. Secondly, you could use some real world examples. If you're paying attention to like what's going on in politics or education or technology, things that you've seen in the world today, use those to defend your idea. So if you don't have any historical or real world examples, you could jump into these other 2. Hypothetical examples would just be like, okay, I can't think of an exact scenario, but I can imagine a scenario where, say everyone did this particular thing, what would the world look like? Or even personal examples. And don't be shy of these ones either. They might be the easiest ones for you to come up with in 40 minutes to say like, hey, in my personal experience, I've seen this happen, and here's how this has helped connect and develop my understanding and my thesis in response to this problem. All right, last one, conclusions. This is the one piece of your essay that you wouldn't have brainstormed and come up with. And it's generally kind of not a regurgitation, but a summary of your ideas. So number 1, briefly summarize your main points. What was your thesis? What were the things that you used to defend it? And obviously don't copy word for word what your thesis was, paraphrase it, like restate it in new words to remind your readers, like, this is what I was trying to get at. And then the other 2 parts, I would kind of argue and ask you to reconnect. Like, what is this prompt asking us to think about as a society, as a whole? Like, how does this fit with the rest of the world? And if you want to push that even a little farther, you've just spent 30 minutes or so writing about this idea. So what? Like, again, connect it back to that importance. Why is my perspective, why is my idea important that people think about in the world today? All right. So to help you out with this, I have a couple of links here that I'm going to strongly recommend you take a look at. There's some sample ACT prompts, so you could start practicing breaking these down, working on them. There's some sample essays you can take a look at that if you were in my class last semester, you already took a look at. And they're kind of broken down by like, okay, here's kind of a D level essay. Here's a B level essay. Here's an A level essay. So you can kind of gauge, okay, here's what I need to be doing to score where I want to score. And then lastly, I've got another tip video made by a professional ACT tutor. And this is really great. Highly recommend that you do this. So again, kind of in closing, yeah, the ACT is tough. 40-minute essay isn't ideal, but what it's asking you to do, I think, is really valid. Think about the world. Think about how you connect with the world and convey those ideas in writing, something that I hope all of my students are able to do. All right. Good luck, folks.